Welcome to another episode of Will It Work? My name is Kevin, and here we try and take a quick look at my game console collection, and we try to see if it works. I have quite a number of game consoles, probably one of the largest private collections in existence, and so, we can see which ones are functional, which ones not. So far I've lost about 3 or 4 of them, which you can go back through past episodes and find out which ones. But today we're looking at the Gemini, which there's, I believe, a couple of things called the Gemini. There's a Telstar Gemini, or a Telegames Gemini, maybe a Telegames. But this Gemini from Coleco should technically be, I believe, the Telstar Gemini, because Coleco used the Telstar brand name. But I think there's a Telegames Gemini, which makes things even more I don't know why people like the Gemini name so much. It's, crazy astrology or something going on, not sure. So what this is that ColecoVision was a game console that was sort of like, you had the Atari 2600, which was like a very early game system that was very popular that took game cartridges. It was sort of the evolution of where Pong was going. 2600 kind of took off, and it left most other consoles in the dust that, a lot of department stores and electronics companies were trying to come out with things that were similar. Some came a little bit earlier, some came a little bit later, etc. And then what happened is that, the Atari 2600 came out in 1977. And, it really kind of started to take off around 1980, 1981. I know it seems weird that it took that long, but things moved a lot slower back then, and you had to wait until you had sort of a critical mass where the electronics were cheaper and people could afford it, and, you had better games coming out in the arcades. Arcades were becoming a thing, not just like separate video games, like, Space Invaders was around and all this sort of stuff, but like to have enough game systems, to crowd like a bunch of people and started having arcades and malls and all this kind of stuff, just had kind of a critical mass in the early 1980s. And so, right around that time, they were saying, well, we got to have another generation of game systems, game consoles. And so Atari was working on the 5200, right? And I think in television was, Mattel was, I believe, still probably looking into like maybe making like an advanced in television of some sort. And Coleco was releasing the ColecoVision. And the ColecoVision was a better system, right, in terms of power than the Atari 2600 and, like, say, the Intellivision. It had better graphics, slightly, and it had some expansion options, but it had a lot of good licensed titles, especially out of Japan. It had a lot of, it supported Nintendo, it supported Sega, and it had, a lot of what you needed in order for your game console to be a success. Unfortunately for Coleco, they kind of came out around 80, in the 80s, late 80s, 82 something. And you're right on the edge of the video game console collapse, where everybody started to go towards home computers. A lot of people talk about the video game crash of that time period, and I just want to point out that I was alive during that time period, and it wasn't a video game crash, right? It wasn't like video games stopped being played or something. That didn't happen, right? Most arcades were able to survive that point in time. People were still going to arcades, maybe not in the mass droves, right? And people were still buying video games. But what they were buying video games for were home computers. Commodore 64s, Apple IIs, things of that nature. And so they weren't buying any more Atari cartridges. And so like that next generation just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough technological advancement between like the 2600 to the 5200 and, you know, and the ColecoVision and some other consoles to make people want to jump in. Plus there was a lot of fragmentation. I mean, there was a lot of game consoles that were for sale still. I mean, we talk about a lot of them that just kind of were one and done. But right around this era, everybody was trying to get in on it. You know, you have Vectrex and all this sort of stuff, trying something new, and it didn't take. So, anyway, when the ColecoVision, you know, was out and they were trying to make sales, Coleco decided, hey, we got an idea. We can include this expansion board in the ColecoVision that'll let people play their 2600 games. So they won't have to think one or the other. They can just buy a ColecoVision and get the ability to play 2600 titles. You know, interesting idea, but I think that, you know, it was probably not that successful for them because everybody had a 2600. Just everybody had a 2600. I mean, it was just like, if you grew up in a family without a 2600, you probably had something else. But most people, at some point or another, had a 2600 or could have gotten a 2600 if they really wanted one. I mean, it was hugely popular. Like, everybody that had, you know, something had an Atari 2600. It was like the one system that you would have, and then maybe you would have another one, right? Like, you might have a ColecoVision, but you already have a 2600 somewhere else. Like, that's just how it was. So, Atari, of course, sued Coleco and said, hey, you know, you can't be making this expansion thing. And so they ultimately settled out of court where Coleco decided, hey, we're just going to be a licensee of Atari technology, and we're going to go ahead and, you know, pay our fees or whatever and be able to, you know, sell this expander properly, let's say, under the Atari 2600 brand, and, you know, pay Atari their license. But along the way, they decided, you know what we're also going to do? We're going to make an Atari 2600 machine, and we're going to sell that and try to get some money selling our own version of Atari 2600 machine. So this is what this is. This is a clone of the Atari 2600 that Coleco made. They made a very sort of smaller, I don't know what you want to say, but it's, you know, it's kind of compact version. It's not that the Atari 2600 was that big, but this was more of like a Atari 2600 Junior size, right? And it had, you know, pretty basic back here, you know, your RF out, your power, your channel 3 and channel 4, and, you know, it took two controllers, and, you know, it still had the black and white versus color switch that's famous on these systems, and, you know, I can't quite see what that says. I think that's reset or something. Anyway, yeah, sorry. I didn't wear my glasses today. I gotta find my glasses. I think I left them in my car. Anyway, what's kind of novel about this system over the other ones are basically these controllers. Okay, so you basically have a fire button here on the left. That's decent. It's not too recessed. It's got a fairly good spring. And I think, like, if you had this new, considering how old this is, it would be, you know, pretty decent. You can tell by, like, how many screws we have here on the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 screws plus the controller hole here. Probably has another screw in there. You know, they were thinking durability with this kind of thing, which is good, because when you're, you know, making games that have sticks versus pads, they can take a lot of beating. So they had the stick up here, which was, you know, a little bit smaller, less tall than, say, a comparable Atari 2600 joystick, right? So there's a 2600 joystick, you know, much taller, and then at the same time, they included a paddle control down here on the bottom, so you could play paddle control games. Now, it is a paddle control, and you might not be aware of this, but, or you might be, who knows, but a lot of times, if you've ever looked back and you've seen paddle controls for the old Atari 2600, they look, you know, just like, you know, with the circle on here. And the ones that came with the system initially, and the ones they sold as paddle controllers, you know, it goes to, you know, a stopping point, and if you go the other way, it goes to a stopping point there, right? So you don't spin it forever, one way or the other. You kind of have a limit on where you can go. Well, Atari then also sold racing controllers, which were identical, essentially, except that they didn't have that stop, that click, you know. So you could keep spinning indefinitely to the right or indefinitely to the left. Marketing, it's a wonderful thing, you know. It's so silly because, I mean, you probably could drive with these if, you know, considering the complexity of the racing games on the 2600, but whatever. That's just what they did. So, this here is a 2600 multi-cart. It is dip switch enabled, so you have to flip the switches to get to the right game, and then you can insert the cart, turn it on, and play the game. Now, I'm not a big fan of the dip switch system, but you don't have much choice when you have something that's this old, because you know, a lot of Atari carts were only like 2K in memory. You can't build menus and things to select games, or at least, I mean, maybe somebody can, I don't know, but it's going to be like, you know, pretty cumbersome. Where here, you know, you want to get the game in, dip switch. And so a lot of the old 8-bit games have dip switch multi-carts in order to play them. Where I've had, like, say, the Vectrex, I have a multi-cart for that, and that doesn't use dip switches. It has an on-screen menu, and you select games for it. So I just think the really early ones need dip switches, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Realistically, there's so many clones now for the 2600, and most things play really well because, you know, that hardware is so old that you can emulate a 2600 on, like, a, you know, on a can opener or something these days. It's ridiculous, and be able to play it. So what we're going to do is we're going to play one game on here just to make sure it works. I don't know what game it is, but I'll turn it on and we'll see. I'll try both controllers and make sure they have full range of motion and movement. Of course, I'll share the video with you, and then that'll be it. We'll have some closing thoughts and wrap it up. All right, here we go. Okay, here we are looking at the Coleco Gemini Atari clone, and we have Atari Pac-Man from the 2600. We've looked at a number of Pac-Mans on this series, and I thought it might be kind of fun to put the Atari 2600 Pac-Man, which is one of the worst Pac-Man, so we can all see what that looks like while we test the controllers out. So I'm not going to test out the panel controls. I'm just going to test the joysticks. I won't feel like searching through this controller to figure out which one's a paddle control game. So let's see. How do we do this? We'll hit reset. Oh, I got to... Sorry, folks. There's a delay when I try to play the games on the feed that you're viewing, unfortunately. So I'm going to pause this for a second and get it so the other screen is on so I can actually see things in real time. All right, that's better. Okay, here we go. Actually, this isn't even Pac-Man. I mean, it is in the sense that this is what Pac-Man looks like, but I'm not the Pac-Man. I'm some sort of alien or something. It's supposed to be like a weird clone of Pac-Man. Like if you were to play this, you would just have different sprites than the ghosts. But the board itself is totally Pac-Man. The sound effects are completely Pac-Man too. I don't know, like, if that was, you know, people do this sort of stuff so they don't get sued or whatever. I don't know if this kind of, like, changing one or two things where, like, leaving the sound effects in place would get you out of a copyright case. Because, like, you could probably prove, for instance, that the sound effects are, you know, identical, and that alone should probably burn you, right? Because you stole an asset, let's say, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't make the rules. All right, well, that works. Let's try one more thing and see what it looks like. Let's shut it off here. That controller is good. We'll try the other controller, and we'll also flip up the dip switch. I don't actually know what's on this multi-cart. It didn't actually come with an explanation of all the titles that are on it. and the website that, for the people that make it's there, but it's under some sort of maintenance. Who knows if it's COVID related or something. But so I can't actually even download the games. So this is like Atlantis for the 2600. So we'll give that a shot here real quick. I can't even see my bullets because they're so small. This game, like, I don't know, it was kind of like a missile command kind of thing. But it was like impossible because like those ships would just come out of nowhere and like lay waste to your base like so quickly. Let's move on. Let's try something else. Can we find the game I don't know the name? How about that? That'll be easy. Pac-Man again. Seriously? Look, it's a Pac-Man, but it's like with different graphics again. That's awful. Let's shut that off. This multi-cart's more interesting than the game system. Let's put them all up. All dip switches up. Everyone. You're all in now. Let's see what game we get when we're all up. This guy like 3D printed this case or something. Yeah. What is that? What the? All right, I don't know. I don't know what that is. It's weird. Move a couple the other way. See what happens with this. Just picking random things now. What is that? What am I looking at? Is it a game? I'm like this guy in the middle. It almost looks like it's trying to be like a Zelda thing, or I mean, a really bad one, right? Like I'm walking around some kind of like there's something. Let's go in there. Oh, now where am I? Is this a town? What is this? What's this green thing? Every time I press the button, that happens. Woo! I don't know what's going on here. This is so weird. What is this? I'm lost in the woods for real, man. Where am I? And there's no random monster encounters, right? Maybe I got to go under and up. What is going on? I don't even want to hit the button because I don't know if I'm actually entering that thing or if I'm just like moving around or something. It doesn't do anything. Woo! I don't see it. Like if I push the button. I don't know. I don't know what that is. That's actually a game. I don't think it's time if they got that position. My God. Rambo. 2002 Rambo. 2002. What? What is going on? Oh, I go slower when I get shot. I'm supposed to help this person, I think, and not shoot him, maybe. Am I rescuing POWs? Is that what's going on? I mean, I don't look anything like Rambo, and those guys, what are they, carrying guns? I mean, kind of, right? What's that? Somebody else I was supposed to help? Yeah, so I'm supposed to get that guy. Go for the snake. What are these green things? Do I grab those? No. What's this? Just a bird. Oh, it's POW. Making up my own game. None of this is probably what it is, but there's like little cars there. Can I get in one of those cars? Be cool if it was like front line or something. I can get in like a tank. Adrian. Mess with me, I'll give you a war you won't believe. I don't seem to be able to die. I just go really slow. I like this mechanic. I like not dying and just going slower. It's like frustrating and yet not a complete waste of time. All right, we'll try one more. I know I said I was only going to play one, but this has become a little bit more interesting. Let's put this one down over here. Let's see what this is. We'll do this all day. What's that? Is that like Defender? Stargate? I always found this game to be rather difficult. Some people were good at it, but you gotta like stop these guys and then make sure your dude doesn't fall to his death, which is like really hard because you move so damn fast. And you know, there was like Defender and then there was Stargate Defender. And if you're not familiar, like Defender and Stargate Defender are basically the same thing, except that like there were these Stargates that you could go into and they would warp you. I don't know if it was like into another play area on the same map. I can't remember anymore. Or you went to a different like planet or something. I mean, or a city, because you're on Earth basically trying to protect those little guys on the ground. And when you hear that little noise, like that means one of them has been picked up by the aliens, and then you got to go like save them. And as you progress in the game, it just gets like incredibly frustrating because they get faster, and then they just basically grab everybody. And when they do take somebody and they get all the way to the top of the screen, they turn into like some sort of super mutant, and they're really a pain in the ass to kill. You can tell though that like, see how my ship disappears when I hit the button? Like, you know, there's just limitations of the system. Like it couldn't do all the graphics. You know, whatever. All right. Gemini obviously works. It works fine. So it's a keeper. We're going to keep it. You know, it's kind of I'd say it's an uncommon 2600 clone. I wouldn't say it's particularly rare. But you know, it's kind of cool. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll move on to the next one.